Good evening and welcome to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. With us, as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, sporting the Tiger Woods Sunday red, Ferrari red.
Is that what it is? I call it orange, but maybe it pops as red on a camera.
A camera? Very good. Very good. Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus, PFF.com is with us. Eric, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm home alone this week, other than the dog and the cat, which are not like really I don't really take care of them that much. So I've been just trying to avoid them, but they need food. So it's been kind of an interesting week.
Yeah, right before we got started, we were treated to the fact that you honored the podcast with a shower today. How nice is that?
Look, man, the data science, it goes for 24 hours a day. So, but I did get pretty for you guys. I'm wearing a nice little shirt here, Kansas City Chiefs colors. Got the Chiefs stuff in the back. Yeah, man, I'm excited to talk about the first trade I've liked by the Chiefs in 5 years.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm proud of you. Of course, my name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Thank you for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Every other week, we're doing each of the podcasts, although when we get closer to the draft, we'll probably hit them both up leading into the draft. If you're catching us right now on the podcast, we do stream live, generally on Tuesdays for Red, Gold, and Bold, every other Tuesday. That's at 9 p.m. Central Time. You can catch it on Twitter. You can be a part of the conversation with your comments in the chat room. If you're on Twitch, you're on Facebook, or if you are on YouTube, that's where you can hit it up. And if you are on any of those, make sure you hit the like, the love, follow, please retweet, let everybody know about the podcast. It'd be a big help for us. So again, don't be shy. Don't cost nothing to hit that like and love button. Go ahead and do it. It helps the podcast in a big, big way. So we do appreciate it. We thank you in advance for all your kind thoughts and words. A lot to get to today. How do the Chiefs replace Tyreek Hill? Well, they're into it. We'll talk about that. Ronald Jones is the Chief. Patrick Mahomes, what kind of expectations you put on him now that he's lost one of his fabled weapons? Rumors that the Chiefs are out after a cornerback right now, looking around. Stephon Gilmore, James Bradberry, a couple of the names that are being thrown around. Andy Reid talking about building it back, and the Chiefs working on defense. Have they done enough? And if we've got time, we might even touch on the fact that Mark Donovan, the president of the Chiefs, at the owners' meeting, mentioned the K word. That's right, a stadium over the horizon, Kansas. He mentioned the word Kansas when it comes to where the stadium might be located. Don't know if we'll have time for that. Plenty of time to talk about that. Frankly, years to talk about that one before it's all said and done. Let's start with it. You teased us a little bit, Eric. Let's start with you tonight. The trade of Tyreek Hill. You're on board, it sounds like.
I am. I think this is a team that I think you've brought this up every single offseason since they won the Super Bowl. They had 20 players under contract this upcoming year. And they, effective cap space, which is basically what your cap space is after you sign all the, 51 players minus 22, players with a contract times how much it costs to sign each one to a minimum value deal. That's basically what your effective cap space is. And they didn't really have much effective cap space. It was $20-something million. So this team needed to make a radical change. And I think it's done so in a way that will significantly alter the franchise. But in my opinion, it sets them up in a situation where if they make good decisions, they should still be a contender in the AFC and for the Super Bowl. And I think that's really after going all in, getting the one Super Bowl, the first Super Bowl in 50 years, the next appearance, which would have the second Super Bowl appearance in 50 years, and sort of having it bottom out a little bit this year. They were very healthy, but not quite as good as they were the previous 2 years. I think that this is the best they could have asked for. Does this mean that they're going to continue to make good decisions? In my opinion, I don't know, but I'm very encouraged by this move.
Yeah, Jeff, you like the move overall for the Chiefs now that you've had a little time to digest it?
Oh, I do. I liked it before I got a chance to digest it. I liked it before it ever happened. We were talking about it, speculating about it. Like Eric said, this is the kind of move you have to make if you want to continue to contend for championships. It's you have to lose players you love. not just players that are at the end of their careers or players that are past their prime or players that haven't performed up to their contracts. So to lose a Tyreek Hill and get tremendous value back is a huge thing. But as Eric said, the key to all this is how they draft going forward. And that's really, actually, there's two keys. One is how they draft. Two is how the quarterback plays. We'll get into the quarterback later on in the show, but they have to show the ability to draft more consistently than they have over the last 4 years. And, you look at this last class they had, it was a tremendous class, probably the best class, one of the best classes in the NFL, if not the best, in terms of what they got in terms of Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. You look at Nick Bolton, they found players who can contribute right away. You look at the first draft class of Brett Veach, not so much. All those guys are on the way out, except for Derek Nottie, I believe. And you just can't afford to have those kinds of swings and misses. So I'm encouraged. I think Brett Veach is a really good talent evaluator. I think that there's been some factors affecting some of those players. Like Juan Thornhill was on his way to having a pretty good career until his knee blew out on him as a rookie. But I think overall, if you don't draft well, this means nothing. So the big fear I have is, will they continue to try to pursue the next Tyreek Hill or the next Travis Kelce, or will they evaluate players on their own merit and have a vision that goes beyond what they've been doing? I think it's pretty clear they can't continue to play football the way they did in 2018, 2019. How are they going to play moving forward, and what kind of pieces are they going to put in place to make that happen?
I like this one from Bull Hurley. Is the Super Bowl window closed? Again, if you're catching us on the podcast and in the chat room, you can communicate, and we try to hit up some of the comments, some of the better comments. Let's be honest, they're all pretty good, but we try to highlight the best ones. I like this question because I think that's really what this is all about, right, guys? I mean, Eric, we've talked about this. This is about opening the next Super Bowl window, and I think it's possible to be closing one while you're opening another. That's what you want to do, right? That's what the Chiefs are trying to do. Clearly, they're closing the one that had Tyreek Hill, one of the most explosive wide receivers in football, in it. But they add now they go and try to create a better cap room and replace him with multiple players. I think that's the idea. If they were just trying to recreate Tyreek Hill, I think, we would have seen the fastest guy that's 5'10" that they can find. I think they're going out and evaluating the market overall and buying the best values. Do you like the Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster, at least start to trying to replace Tyreek Hill, and the way it will reshape the offense, because it'll clearly be different. They're different players, even though Valdez-Scantling's very fast. They're clearly different players than Tyreek Hill was.
Yeah, I mean, for anybody that wants to read it, if you look up the research paper that we wrote for the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, I think the interesting one that came out was we were modeling how well a wide receiver tracks the ball on deep passes and how fast they're able to move while still making catches downfield. And, it was sort of the usual suspects. It was like Antonio Brown. It was Tyreek Hill. It was Odell Beckham Jr. early in his career, and so on and so forth. And the only name that popped up in the leaderboard that wasn't somebody who I had, thought of as a superstar was Marquez Valdez-Scantling. In 2020, we had him running an effective 4.28 on the football field on deep patterns. And that's at 6'4", over 200 pounds. He's not going to be Tyreek Hill. I was lobbying the Chiefs to sign him before Tyreek Hill left, because I thought that, to Jeff's point, you can't run the same offense that you ran in 18 and 19. The defense is the NFL. That is number one thing on their board. Do not let Patrick Mahomes throw a deep pass to Tyreek Hill. That was basically every single defense was taking that away, sans the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Chiefs were going to have to adjust. Now, I like this. I like having Valdez-Scantling in there because I think he can stretch the field. He's also somebody who, unlike Tyreek Hill, if they were going to pay Tyreek Hill and deploy him in a deep threat role, they were also going to have to give him the ball. He had 180 targets last year, which is the most in his career. He had 2.5 yards average depth of target less than the previous year, and 1.5 yards after the catch per catch less than last year. So whatever the Chiefs were doing, whatever had brought them to where they were, was not working anymore. And we saw it in the playoff game. We saw it, like, that when they didn't have a left hand, right? And when they adjusted midseason, got better as the season went on offense, but it was still a grind, against some of those great teams. And so this is the, Valdez-Scantling's a key piece to this. Juju Smith-Schuster's a key piece to this. I know some people in the comments have said McCole Hardman's a key piece to this. Travis Kelce's a key piece to this. But the fact of the matter is, I think they're building it in the aggregate, and the betting markets have spoken. They are 10-1 to win the Super Bowl. That is tied for third with the Green Bay Packers, who also traded their best receiver. The Super Bowl window is open. It is just not their Super Bowl anymore. It is Buffalo and it is Tampa. Those are the two favorites. And this is the first time since Mahomes won the NFL MVP that they have not been the favorite in the offseason. And so it's a little different. Their window is not closed, right? The Rams at this time last year were like 14, 15-1, right? The Bengals at this time were 150-1. Like, a lot of noise happens. And I think the Chiefs, when they saw this, were saying to themselves, are we going to sell our soul again, or sell all of our salary cap again for the right to be the best team in the AFC, when that doesn't guarantee you anything, and it doesn't guarantee you anything into the future? This approach and the Valdez-Scantling contract and the Juju contract, very well structured for the Chiefs. This approach is for the long haul, and I really like it, and I like the fact that now they have options.
Jeff, you like the maneuvering that they've done and what they're trying to do as far as the receiver position. Rumors out there as well about, maybe Brandon Cooks, Laviska Shenault, Terry McLaurin. I know the fans all clamor for DK Metcalf, but I think we've discussed that a little bit last time, that the word is that they want exactly what the Chiefs got for Tyreek Hill. And DK Metcalf wants exactly what Tyreek Hill, or close to what Tyreek Hill got. So,
problem.
That doesn't seem to fit. You made that move to get more room. So that doesn't seem like where it's going, but it does, they are at least rumored to be looking around at some of the receivers that are out there, or at least some of those receivers are being shopped, one or the other.
Yeah. I'll go back to the question that was asked of Eric about the Super Bowl window being closed. I agree. It's not closed as long as Mahomes is your quarterback, as long as Andy Reid is your coach. I think that's consistent with having a Tom Brady, a Peyton Manning, an Aaron Rodgers, that level of quarterback. You're going to always be at the dinner table as one of the guests in that party. So the question is, what do you put around those people and how do you move forward? So to answer your question about the receivers, I'm not particularly crazy about continuing to pursue all these veteran guys. I'd like to see them draft somebody and develop somebody, because you're right. I think you get into a situation where, and let's be honest, some of these guys are damaged goods right now. Juju Smith is damaged goods. He may not be here after next year. Marquise Valdez-Scantling, I agree with the speed, but he's been an inconsistent receiver throughout his career. He may not pan out. He may be somebody who can run deep and not catch the ball consistently, which is what Tyreek Hill, aside from speed, was his greatest gift, was being able to make contested catches down the field and be in the right spot and have that chemistry with Mahomes. So I think they could throw numbers at it veteran-wise. I think they have enough guys who are veterans with Valdez-Scantling, with Juju Smith-Schuster, with McCole Hardman, with Travis Kelce. If Josh Gordon can be anything, I think you need to start finding receivers who are younger guys who can keep around for 3 or 4 years, and you can develop a new chemistry with Patrick Mahomes, because that's really where the long game pays off for you. If you are always trying to figure out how to pay the next guy coming down the pipe to keep Patrick happy, that's a tough game to play. But if you're able to find that Devontae Adams type receiver, and the way Green Bay found it, people, it's funny now, we forget what Devontae Adams was early in his career, and there were doubts about him. He wasn't catching the ball consistently. And he didn't have a 1,000-yard season for the first 2 or 3 years of his career, and then he just blew up. But it takes a while to develop. And so, going back to the first question about the Super Bowl window being closed, it's not closed, but you got to develop people and you got to draft well.
Well, and I think one of the really big things about Tyreek Hill, and I think, this is one thing that I don't know if I really understood about offensive football until like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But you think about all systems, the way in which systems crumble is if they are concentrated too much. Weak ties keep systems strong, right? And so, the Super Bowl season, they didn't expect much out of McCole Hardman. He did his kind of gadgety things. That was a weak tie. They didn't expect much out of Sammy Watkins. He was out there. He did his thing. None of us complained that he only had like 500 yards. He did his thing. Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. And then as the seasons have gone on, right, you lose Sammy Watkins. You depend upon McCole Hardman too much, and then he recedes because he's not good enough to start. You have to start Demarcus Robinson and Pringle and stuff. The offense concentrated its risk on a few players, right? Kelce and Hill, right? And when defenses decided we're going to take away Tyreek Hill, it was like, and I don't want to like bring up events or whatever, but it's like when the financial markets crashed, right? When you had too much risk concentrated on one thing, right? And not enough weak ties and not enough things that were tangential. And granted, the quarterback is the biggest strong tie. And we all agree if Mahomes gets hurt for much more than a few games, they're screwed. And that's the gamble you make every year. But you can't have your offense depending upon too many like very concentrated areas of risk, because as we saw last year, if the NFL evolves towards your particular version of offense, it's going to be hard. And kudos to Reed for getting that thing off the ground at the end of the year and getting better as the season progressed. But why make it that hard on yourself?
Yeah, I think I like this comment. It's something I've talked about. Kevin says, come on, guys, the Chiefs are better. Now have 3 or 4 wide receivers, maybe another plus, maybe another one, I think, coming, plus Justin Reed, and still have draft. And no more Sorensen. Super Bowl, here we come. I think we can all appreciate a little humor at the expense of Daniel Sorensen, who did have some very good moments for the Chiefs. I don't want to just run over Daniel Sorensen, but it was a rough year last year for Daniel Sorensen, no doubt. But I do like that, and it kind of dovetails off what you're saying, Eric, that defending multiple receivers that are all threats. Like I think if you can put 4 quality receivers out there, at times 5, whether it's the running back releasing out of the backfield, you can get to whoever their worst coverage guy is. You can pick on that guy. And if Demarcus Robinson's not getting it done, if Byron Pringle is not getting it done, and they have the talent to stop your 1 and 2, if your 3, 4, and 5 aren't any good, then it gets tougher to beat those teams that are good teams. Eric, we've detailed it a number of times. You've talked about it, the analytics breakdown of the value of the third receiver in playoff games. I think that's what the Chiefs get better at. And now potentially the scheme gets better. They also get bigger. And let's be clear, I think McCole Hardman can be a diet Tyreek Hill. That's what he was drafted to be. He's had his best games when Tyreek Hill has been out. He won't replace him, but he gives you some of the same elements. But I'll again, and I don't know how many times I've said it on this podcast, the final pick against the Bengals was a route that you want a 6'3" or 6'4" guy to run, and they had a 5'10" receiver doing it. They bracketed him, and he doesn't have the catch radius to go get it. You throw that route to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he's got a chance to reach beyond the defensive back, catch the ball, and bring it in. That's like, and Patrick Mahomes was maybe too dependent on Tyreek Hill. It had served him well. Just throw it up and Tyreek will make the adjustment in the air. His body control is great. But on that one, he was well covered, and there was nothing he could do to get the ball. There are different types of receivers that give them a different type of threat. And now I'll come back. I think, Jeff, what you said about drafting well is right. But some of this, and I know we're going to talk about the pressure on Patrick Mahomes, and I think there's some of that there. But some of this is on Andy Reid, right? Now the pressure's on Andy Reid to design the offense to maximize the talents of these players.
Yeah. Oh, without question. Look, I'm not going to be the negative Nancy here and be the wet blanket on all this stuff. I want to be positive. It's the off season, a long time to go here, but there are questions about a lot of the guys they're bringing in, which is why some of these guys are discounts right now. But certainly Andy's got to show that he can, I don't want to say have a great second act here because he's had a tremendous career, but what he did with that offense in changing it and molding it to Mahomes' skill set when Mahomes was in his first year as a starter was one of the most impressive things I've seen a head coach do in a long time. Took a lot of college concepts, was willing to, put his West Coast offense, short passing game, timing base to the side. This is what works well. We have speed, we have Kelce, we have Hill, we have this big arm young quarterback. Let's go. The question I have now is, can they continue the momentum they had at the end of last season when they were playing really good football offensively in a different way? Will they be able to run the ball more consistently? Will they be able to take advantage of the things you're talking about with these bigger receivers in the red zone? I think it was very natural for Mahomes to become dependent on Hill and Kelsey because they're Hall of Fame caliber receivers. There are two guys who are probably going to be in Canton someday. And so the tough part, if you're Andy Reid, is trying to find a way to get your quarterback to trust the other guys. And then when you're a young quarterback and you have these young talents around you, you're going to throw the ball to those guys all the time because you trust them to make plays for you. And like all these guys we're talking about, MBS, Juju, McCole to a certain extent, they're going to have to prove that they can actually come up big when Mahomes is out there scrambling around. If he's going to be doing more of that, maybe he'll do less of that. But yeah, Andy's going to have a heart-to-heart with his quarterback, with Bieniemy, with Matt Nagy, and have how are we going to play football now? Because, again, going back to that Super Bowl question, every team in their division is now stacked, is now built to score points. 9 of 10 teams in this conference are now built to score points. Are they going to be able to, what they've always been able to say is, no matter what happens, we got the best quarterback, we got the fastest receiver, we got the best tight end, we will outscore you. How do you do that now? It's going to take a lot more savvy and a lot more strategy than they've had to show up to this point.
One more on the trade front. Like, I mentioned some of the names that are out there. If I don't buy that they're all out there, right? Like, I think some of this is, and I've talked to some people that maybe the teams are just trying to float some interest and see what they can get. Like, oh, okay, well, wait a minute. Like the Raiders and Dolphins are paying high price. Well, what can we get for our guy? Or maybe just kicking the tires and feeling what's out there. But if Terry McLaurin is available, who's had basically, he came up just short his first year, but basically 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons with like the people you see on this screen right now playing quarterback, right? Just a hodgepodge of various quarterbacks. I'm quite intrigued by that guy, right? Like, I don't know why you would trade for Carson Wentz and then give up his number one target, but if he's available, I like that. And let's be clear, that trade would only happen. I had somebody tweet me this earlier tonight. Well, you're right back where you were with Tyreek Hill next year. Oh, okay, fine. Actually, you're not. You're there now because he doesn't have a fifth-year option, so you'd have to make that decision now. But you wouldn't, because you don't make that deal unless you can extend him, right? So if you trade for him, you extend him. Is there a veteran that you're willing to go trade for, Eric, that you think would be a good fit for this team? We can talk about the draft here in a second, which I think is going to be an obvious spot where they're going to have their head on a swivel with those first 8 picks looking at receivers. But is there a veteran that now, because Marquez Valdez-Scantling was your dream date, got it. Can you get greedy and give me another name?
I mean, I think the problem is you're going to get into the Orlando Brown situation with anybody you take right now. Because, like, McLaurin, he's on year 4, right? So he's an extension guy or a franchise tag guy at a premium position, which is not going to be cheap. Metcalf, as you said, Lockett, as you said. Oh, Lockett, the weird one, and I know this is one that I put in the trade simulator a couple days ago. Brandon Cooks of Houston. Now, the issue with Brandon Cooks of Houston is that I believe his base salary this year is $12.5 million. So they would probably have to get Houston to sort of eat some of that and then give up a higher draft pick than they would otherwise want to. But Cooks would be somebody, I think, he's a pretty good wide receiver, and he's been available for a while, has always been linked to the Chiefs. I just don't think that there's, especially now, and I think this is one of the things where maybe the Chiefs and the Packers figured it out a little bit. The draft has so many good wide receiver prospects that what would you rather do? Would you rather tie yourself to Terry McLaurin, who's fantastic? No, I'm not dissing Terry McLaurin, but would you rather give up a second-round pick and then basically be on the hook for like $15 to $18 million next year for Terry McLaurin? Or would you rather take 2 shots at the wide receiver position and have that player and basically say the best guy of those 2 gets to play with McCole Hardman, MBS, and Juju Smith-Schuster and Travis Kelce? Because I think, like, when I know what Belichick would do, right? But when Belichick traded for Brandon Cooks, it was, I believe, on his rookie deal. And then he traded him right to LA after he got 1 year out of him, right? Like, that, I don't see a player like that for the Chiefs right now. I mean, KJ Hamler came to mind, but that's a team within the division. So, like, that's the answer about Brandon Cooks, I think it was just a weird situation. The New Orleans Saints were up against the cap, and they traded him to New England, and then New England's the team that trades him, and then he got a concussion issue in LA, and then he got to Houston, and Houston's where your career goes to die unless you're him, who's overcome a lot of that. But I don't think it's a characteristic of Cooks that he's been traded a lot. I think he just got stuck in a vortex there.
Yeah, listen, you asked the question, would I want to, or should they trade? No, I wouldn't have traded for Frank Clark. I like that Valdez-Scantling cost them only money, right? It didn't cost them draft picks. So I would rather take the bite out of the draft apple a couple of times and see what I come up with as opposed to making the trade. But that was the news this morning. It seemed to come from one ESPN comment. I don't believe it's really that hot and heavy. But I want to.
How many veteran receivers do you need?
I mean, I think.
And now we got 5 in the room, right?
Well, what are the 5? The 2 that have been acquired, Hardman and who?
Gordon, Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, MVS. Isn't there a 5th guy in there?
Garrett Dieter, and I'm sure Marcus Kemp is still around.
That's when you draft somebody.
Yes, listen. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I'm not. Although I'll buy that Josh Gordon makes the team when he makes the team. And by the way, I was quite bullish on him originally, but
we know. I'm not going to beat you up about that anymore.
I'm throwing myself
40 catch, 700-yard season, huh?
Throwing myself mercy of the court, right?
He was your MBS.
Yeah, we talked.
No, MBS is going to work. That's the difference.
Okay, this is tape,
Yeah, he was not my MBS. I did like the idea of getting him. He's cost almost nothing. I still don't mind the signing. It just hasn't worked.
Right.
I was more DJ Chark and Marquez Valdez-Scantling was my 3rd guy. I forgot the other one. Oh, Christian Kirk, and then he went for $72 million. I didn't see that coming. So for crying out loud. But look, I know. I think you go into the draft and you do that, and I think that's the route to go. Real quick, what is the expectation now on Patrick Mahomes? They've added Ronald Jones as well. Factor that into the equation. How much pressure? How much is on Patrick Mahomes? They're clearly saying he's the key guy, which we've all been asking the Chiefs to do, to trust in Patrick Mahomes. There's a lot on his shoulders, right, Eric? I mean, he's got to deliver now. The receivers change, but they've invested in him. They're giving him weapons. There really isn't anything to complain about, and he's got to have a good season.
Well, you have probably, if not the best, one of the best receiving tight ends in the history of the NFL. Still probably has something left. He was great last year, despite, I think, what we would consider decline for him. But he's still there. The cupboard is not bare. You have a 1st-round running back. You have a 2nd-round running back now in Rojo. I think one of the underrated aspects of the Chiefs last year is their offensive line was fantastic in the run game. They were 3rd in PFF grades. I think they were 1st, actually, in percentage of run plays that were perfectly blocked. Now, some of that's going to be that you're not facing as many men in the box, so it's just a numbers game. You have less people to defeat, but it's one of those things where they invested heavily in the offensive line last year, and coming out of it, you have an interior offensive line that might be the best in football. You have a left tackle who's pretty good. You have a right tackle situation that's questionable, but you're in a draft where you have a ton of draft picks and there's a lot of linemen, right? So you're in a good spot there. I think it's going to be done in 2 parts. I think they're going to lean a little bit more on the run game somewhat. I think they're going to be under center more. They had success when they did that at times last year. I think you're going to see more play action from Patrick Mahomes. You're going to see some of the crossers and stuff like that. I hope this is where I think, we could, take a page out of the Aaron Rodgers playbook and say, okay, where were some of the difficulties happening in Green Bay prior to when Matt LaFleur went there? It was freelancing. It was not staying within the structure of the play. Aaron Rodgers in 2018, the last year with McCarthy, 3 seconds in the pocket per pass play and a PFF record 56 throwaways, right? Just not structured football. 2 MVP seasons out of Aaron Rodgers playing in structure. I think the biggest thing here for the Chiefs is going to be, without Tyreek Hill, there's just going to have to be more structure to the offense. There's going to have to be, you hit your back foot and you make a throw. You hit your back foot and you dump the ball off to the running back. And to me, that if I can see that out of Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to be very enthusiastic about where this team is going, right? That is where the Brady maturation happened. The Super Bowl against, right? They went through their first bunch of Super Bowls. Then they went 10 years without a Super Bowl, right? 10 years without a Super Bowl. First Super Bowl they won against Seattle was like 11 catches for Shane Vereen. The next Super Bowl they won against the Falcons, it was like 13 catches for James White, right? Like the Chiefs have to find a better floor to their offense. And that's going to be with structure with Patrick Mahomes. Let the non-structured stuff be a bonus as opposed to what you live off of. And then find the running back in the passing game like that. And I don't know how Rojo fits in there because he's a horrible passing game running back, but maybe that's where Clyde Edwards-Helaire focuses his attention and they run the ball to Ronald Jones on early downs. But that's kind of where I see it.
I don't know where to even start there. Jeff, I'll throw it to you. We'll come back to Ronald Jones in a second. Yeah. But how about the pressure on Patrick Mahomes? I agree with Eric. He's going to have to play more structured within the offense. He's going to have to take, some smaller profits instead of always looking for the big payday, right? That's the kind of receivers. Maybe we'll even see some old school West Coast football with a slant being thrown to some of these bigger receivers, which when they're backpedaling out of the stadium, why not throw a 5-yard slant? But that's that I think part of the pressure, and this was really one of your topics. Yeah. I think part of the pressure, it's on him to evolve, isn't it? Like not just perform and put numbers up, but he's got to evolve with his evolving roster.
That is the pressure, and that it will be immense because he's never had to play this way. I mean, it's great to mention Tom Brady and how he developed, but Tom Brady can't play the way Patrick Mahomes plays. That's never been an option for you. So you had to become this kind of quarterback. Peyton Manning had to become this kind of quarterback. But, when you're a quarterback who has the kind of physical gifts, the love of improvisation and the ability to create the way Patrick Mahomes creates, it's going to be a transition. And we saw that last year when he was really fighting it in the first half of the season, and it was ugly. There were a lot of turnovers. There were a lot of plays that he wasn't making in the first 3 years of his career because he was trying to do too much. And so that's what I want to see in Mahomes is can he, in his 5th year as a starter, be able to say, yeah, I have lesser talent around. I may have more people around me, more weapons, but I have lesser talent. And that doesn't mean I have to do more to make that talent better. Like that's really the sweet spot for any great quarterback is to be able to understand you don't have to go out there and move mountains to make guys better. It can be more subtle stuff. It could be like what Eric says, being more structured, playing more within the offense. Is he going to be comfortable doing that? I can't say that right now because we all know that Tyreek Hill made some huge plays for him in this offense. I can think of like 4 or 5 games alone that Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes won just by Mahomes running around, finding Mahomes 50, 60 yards downfield and winging it, including a championship. And so once you had that taste, once you've had that drug in you, it's hard to give it up. It's really, really difficult. So as you asked me that question about Andy Reid a few minutes ago. That's Andy Reid's biggest, not challenge, his biggest task this year is getting Patrick Mahomes to make that transformation seamlessly, as opposed to what we saw last year, where it was train wreck at the beginning of the year, really good in the middle, towards the end, and then train wreck second half of AFC Championship game. Let's not forget that happened. Let's not forget we saw what his floor could look like when he's out there trying to do too much, and he can't make it happen the way he wants to. Because now we've seen that, now we know he's not always going to be special every time he steps on the football field.
And hopefully Patrick Mahomes recognizes that as well, and he takes learns the lesson from that Bengals game. I like this one from Brett. Andy Reid run the ball. That's funny.
It is funny.
It is
I agree with that.
It is definitely funny. And Eric, listen, we spent a lot of time with you talking about stop with the RPOs and run the ball downhill. And you've mentioned that they graded well at running the ball. And I think it has to be part of the plan, doesn't it? When you mention signing of Ronald Jones makes Clyde Edwards-Helaire the receiving back, which we've spent the entire time since he's been here going, where is Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the passing game? I mean, I do think that is – look, Ronald Jones has the same agent as Patrick Mahomes. And I think one of the underplayed maybe not underplayed, I'm not going to say underreported because it means it makes it sound like I'm calling somebody out for doing it. But I don't think what gets talked about enough is kind of the role that agents do play. And there's going to be a conversation sooner rather than later. They're not getting to the 12th year of Patrick Mahomes' contract. They'll have to renegotiate. And I wonder how much of this is, let's bring Ronald Jones in. He's one of Lee Steinberg's guys. It makes that group happy, makes it easier for negotiations down the road. Because if he's not catching the ball, is he really the right fit for this team, Eric?
No. But like he's probably a better version of what Derek Gore was bringing in, right? So again, I don't like the signing. I'm going to default to your statement, which is there's no such thing as a bad 1-year contract. They're not committing a ton of money to him. Andy Reid has shown that he does not play running backs who suck, right? And no matter what your name is, if your name's Le'Veon Bell, you're sitting on the bench. If your name's LaShawn McCoy, you're sitting on the bench. So I don't think that this has a ton of risk associated with it. Other than, to your point, it's making Patrick Mahomes happy. And that was always the thing with Orlando Brown. That was always the thing. I know the Nora Princiati article that came out of the Ringer where I was like, look, I don't like to trade from a math perspective, but you gain so much positive value from Mahomes. If you're paying him back a little bit by putting Orlando Brown on your team, then so be it, right? Like there's aspects where I'm willing to give and take. But yeah, I don't know why Jerick McKinnon's not on this team. Like right now, I don't know why they haven't gone out. I mean, the running back market has been really bad this year. Like, Leonard Fournette got a good deal. But even that's $7 million a year was his deal. And he's a former 4th overall pick. Like the running back market is not coming out. And then the running back market in the draft, like Breece Hall might go in the first round, but actually the number of running backs in the first round is an underdog at 1, right? Like, so it's more likely than not Breece Hall is going to be the first running back taken, and he's going to be taken in the second round. So just like right now, like the Chiefs might just be waiting this out. They might be waiting on McKinnon. They may be waiting on, James White was signed by the Patriots, the actual James White. So maybe that one obviously isn't going to work. But like to complete that running back room, they need somebody who's a reliable pass catcher. And if they believe that player's Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like I'd be a little nervous. But at the same time, at some point, the guy's got to have a more substantiated role on this team.
Yeah, I would agree. Jeff, you think CEH, this is it? This is the year it all comes together?
Oh, I thought you meant this is it as it's over. We're done talking about him.
No. We'll be talking about him as long as he's on the roster. But I do think that they have to run the football more. And I think that's what they see in Ronald Jones. And I think that's what I think you're going to see them. Listen, we have banged the drum for a couple of years about I know in our various different spots where we've done it, but certainly the entire time we've been doing this podcast, that, hey, this is how the Patriots do the personnel game. They're doing that. They're following that lead. We've also talked about this year that the Patriots are a bit of a chameleon. They adapt to their surroundings, and when what the defense gives them is run the ball, they have somebody to help run the ball. Ronald Jones gives them a guy to hopefully run the ball downhill, and that's what they're saying. I think they went into it a little bit arrogant last year that we can always just make the big play down the field or have Patrick scramble around. And now they appear to be getting different kinds of weapons so that no matter who the matchup is, well, we've got whichever blade out of the Swiss Army knife we need to play that style of game, which is how the Patriots have done it. So I don't think Ronald Jones is the end-all be-all to running backs, but I think he's different than what they have. It scares me a little bit to hear Eric, and I think it's accurate to say he's a lot like Derek Gore. But I think this does continue to diversify the offense. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Yeah, it does. It does. You're right. And look, I think Ronald Jones, I'm not as down on him as Eric is. I think that if they are going to run the football more, he is somebody you'd like to add to the mix more so than Jerick McKinnon, because Jerick McKinnon fits more of what they were doing in the past. So I'm more of I like workhorse running backs. I like their offense more when Kareem Hunt was here, because he was a banger. He could catch the football. He could do everything you wanted a back to do, and he had impact. And their offense, for my money, that was the best their offense ever was when he was in it, and Sammy Watkins was healthy. And so, do I think that CEH will ever get to that level? No, I don't think that. Do I think he can be productive in an offense where he is running the football downhill? Yeah, I think when I've seen him play, that's when he's been productive. And sometimes you can have so many options, so many weapons that you can lose track of how to best utilize everybody. And I think that's part of what's happened to him within this offense, is that it's been so heavily tilted towards throwing the ball that something he does well has gotten lost in the shuffle. But, I think for me, a better way to assess what they're doing offensively is to look around the AFC West and see how would this offense, based on what they have right now, match up what they have in LA with the Chargers. I don't think it matches up well right now because I think that the Chargers are probably going to draft a corner. They have J.C. Jackson. They've got Asante Samuel. They've got Derwin James. I don't know how you are able to attack that defense, obviously with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa up front with what they have on offense. I look at the Denver Broncos with Bradley Chubb, with Randy Gregory, with their secondary, with Justin Simmons back there, with Patrick Surtain, the second back there. I don't know how they win consistently against that bunch. That, to me, is a better way to have a conversation about what they're doing offensively because they're going to have to find a way to counter what those teams have done to be able to outlast them. That's really where it's at. Again, I like some of the moves they've made, but I also look at what other teams have done in this division, and on paper, those teams look better.
So it's still not enough in your mind.
No, it's not enough. Not right now, but it's still it's March.
Right.
We got a lot more time to go.
They have 12 graphics. I would say this is another example, and I didn't even look this up because I had focused on Ronald Jones's negatives. I actually think Jeff brings up Kareem Hunt. I think as a runner, they're kind of similar. The thing that Kareem Hunt brought was he was good at everything, right? He was good at catching the screen. He was good at going deep, and he was a good blocker, willing guy. When you look at
he's all right as a blocker.
Okay, so Ronald Jones
there a lot of the times when it was time to block. That's where we met Darrell Williams.
Okay, Ronald Jones in 2020 as a runner had a 84.7 PFF grade, including playoffs. He had 1,117 yards on the ground, 4.9 yards a carry, 3.5 yards per carry after contact. Pretty good. 36 missed tackles forced. Last year, he had lost his job to Fournette in the playoffs of 2020, so that was the issue. But last year, it was 4.2 yards a carry, which is about league average. He had only 2.53 yards per carry after contact, 13 missed tackles forced. So again, the Chiefs are buying somebody who has been good before, who's still young, who they're hoping gets that second sort of win. But to Jeff's question, how are they going to beat the Chargers? Well, I think they're going to beat the Chargers I think they're looking at the Chargers and saying, we're going to beat the Chargers how every other team is beating the Chargers. And that's by running it down their throat a little bit and being a team that can actually out physical them. And, it was actually remarkable that they were able to score all those points against them the two games last year because they weren't running the football right at last year all that well in either of those games. But the Chargers, the reason the Chargers weren't in the playoffs was because the Vegas Raiders ran down their throat when they couldn't stop them. And I know they've gotten some players in the mix. They might even draft Jordan Davis, but that's the weakness there. That's the weakness in Vegas too. That's the weakness also for the Denver Broncos. That's a weakness for all three of those defenses. And I think maybe that's a little bit of a signal for them too, because that is the Chiefs are strong up front, especially in the interior of the offensive line. That is something that none of us at this time, to Jeff's point, it's just March this time last year, there's no Trey Smith, there was no Creed Humphrey on this team. And I think, they've pressed their luck and gotten three really good interior offensive linemen.
And let's be honest, I know they like Creed Humphrey. They wouldn't have taken him in the second round. I know they like Trey Smith, that they wouldn't have drafted him in the sixth. But did they know exactly how good those guys are going to be? You don't ever know exactly how good they're going to be until you get them out there. But I will say this: now they've had a chance to coordinate an offense and know what they've got. They went in with a plan last year. Those guys proved to be rugged, earth movers. Orlando Brown's that kind of guy, and to me, they're just adapting a little bit to their personnel. I think it's a positive. I'm with Jeff, though. I like, and I think the future of a high-powered passing offense is with a big back that can, like a Jerome Bettis would be ideal, like a big physical back that can be one back there that can catch the ball out of the backfield, but also can be like an extra guard in the backfield. I think that's the future of the running back position, right? Now, if you can be a great blocker at 5'10", great. 5'10", 210, great. But I'd like to see him get a guy that can really punish people. Ronald Jones will do a little bit of that, but I'd like to see another even bigger guy that's out there. I don't think we're going to see it because by getting more real receivers, there's going to be less special team spots that are held down by receivers. Yeah. So that means you got to get kick covers somewhere else. That's going to be D-backs. That's going to be running backs. And so it might be that we see some more guys that can actually get down the field. Speaking of defensive backs, Stephon Gilmore and James Bradberry are the names that are out there. Jeff, do you like either one of those? Because I'm hearing that from the Giants, it would basically be a 7th, and the Giants got to eat some of the money, or there could even be the Chiefs will take on more of the money, but there'll be a flip-flop of picks that has them getting better. In other words, they're getting paid to take him off the Giants' books. I don't know but I'd heard that this evening, as a matter of fact. I don't know if that would be the case, but do you like either one of those names that seem to be the names that most fans are talking about?
Well, I like Bradberry better than Gilmore just because he's younger. I think he's more athletic at this point of his career. I think he's been really good in Carolina, really good with the Giants. He's versatile. He covered Travis Kelce when they played back in November and really pushed him around on some plays. I mean, really just you look at some of the film of that and he was coming off the ball. Kelce was getting manhandled by this guy. The problem is that you got to pay the guy at some point. And I don't know how comfortable the Chiefs are with the idea of coughing up that kind of money for a corner. But I do like the idea that they're actually going out and pursuing more established names at this position. That's been a criticism of mine for a long time, that they've been, minimizing that spot and going with doing some bargain basement shopping. I think you need to, if you're not going to have a strong pass rush, and at this point we still don't know what they're going to have in terms of pass rush, you better have some guys who can cover people. And Gilmore couldn't get that big deal with the Patriots at the end of his run there. He couldn't make it happen with Carolina, but he's still a guy who's 2 or 3 years removed from being Defensive Player of the Year in this league, and he's 31. And so I think at the very least he can give you some leadership and give you some savvy at that spot. If I were doing the deal, I would take Gilmore, just because if it doesn't work out, you can always just draft somebody, find somebody else. I think the commitment to Bradberry beyond this year would be something the Chiefs may not want to stomach, because they have to pay Snead at some point and a few other guys down the road.
Do you have a preference on those guys, Eric? And then I want to ask you a philosophical question, if it's changing with the Chiefs. Do you like one more than the other there?
Well, I think with Bradberry, right, at the numbers $13.5 million, I think you don't want to take that on. I'd probably even give up one of the 4th round picks to not have to take on his money, right? Like, I think 1 year with him is probably that's something the Ravens would do. That's something the Patriots would do. That's something, you think about like Jason McCourty or Lee Bodden or whatever. Like, the Patriots would do this, right? And I think that would be like, Bradberry is a year removed from being one of the best cornerbacks in football, like bar none, and when he was in Carolina, his grades were never the best, but you look at the receivers he had to face in the AFC and the NFC South, it was like Julio and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Like, the guy was shadowing the best players at the position all year. So he's tested. I don't know what the Giants are doing, honestly. He's a good player. And so take advantage of that. If they're willing to give you him and take some of his money for like a 4th round pick, I think that's a little low. The thing with Gilmore is you don't have to give up a pick, but he is older. He is a good football player. To what Jeff said, I get a little bit like Darrelle Revis, hopefully not vibes out of that, where like he's just coming in to offer leadership, but he's kind of, he's kind of not a member of the team really, So I would say Bradberry is the one I would prefer, but the issue is going to be, when you go with Fenton and you go with Snead, like, they just need bodies out there, and so I think the draft and something in a trade or free agency is probably required for them at this point.
I always like the younger player because you got a better chance for it to last longer. I think Gilmore, the fact that he's still out there, is the age. If you look around there, it's Tyrann Mathieu, it's Akeem Nicks, it's Calais Campbell. It's all the old guys that are still out there, right? And I think teams know old guys get hurt. I'm curious, is this a reaction to the way the market's gone? That are they having to go with plan B, that they wanted to go D-line, haven't been able to get D-line, and so now they don't like what's left on the defensive line, Jeff, and they're saying, we've got to pivot, and we're not going to get to the quarterback, so let's try to cover better?
Yeah. I think if you look around the league, I think more and more teams have been going in that direction to say, let's try to it's so hard to rush really good quarterbacks in this league because the ball's coming out quickly, or they're really athletic and you just can't get them on the ground anymore. And so maybe you're better off having guys who can cover. That's what Baltimore's been doing. They said, we'll just screw it. We'll just go with two of the best corners we can find, Pro Bowl caliber corners, and we'll throw in a good safety and we'll just rock like that. I mean, that's what the Rams.
But the Baltimore Ravens don't commit to the edge position, right?
Yeah.
So like they let Judon go. They what was it? They got Tyus Bowser, it's $4, $5, $6 million a year. They drafted away. They get Pernell McPhee back. Like Jeff's exactly right with them. They throw numbers at the secondary. Now they got every one of those players got hurt last year, so that hurt them. But that's how they approached it because they're like the Chiefs. They don't get to pick the top end edge players, and because of the way that they structure their cap, they don't give the top guys the $20 million deals like Frank Clark.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I was going to say also that, and I'm doing a story on this for our website. It's like pass rushers now are a whole different animal because there's a lot of these guys are so raw coming out of college. Their teams are taking their best athletes, putting them out there and just say, go get the quarterback. And once they get in this league and they have to actually have some moves to get by a good offensive tackle, it takes a while to develop those guys. I was talking to Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah in Minnesota, and I said, hey, when you guys got to Darius Smith, was that as insurance against Danielle Hunter getting hurt again, or was it more so because you think those two guys together can be good? And he's like, to be honest with you, it was insurance for that, and also insurance if we draft a guy, we got to have a couple of years for these guys to get up to speed. Like all these guys like David Ajabo and Arnold Ebikite and Moya Bafe, all these dudes who are coming from other countries learning how to play football when they're teenagers, they're becoming first-round picks just because they're just athletic freaks, but they don't know how to play football.
Yeah, you remember the Thursday night game when Tamba Hali was showing Joey Bosa like all the moves and stuff, and like you look at that position, right? And the guys that the Chiefs might be signing right now are the Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes is 33 years old. He's been around forever. Like Terrell Suggs won a Super Bowl with Kansas City. He's around forever. Remember Dwight Freeney playing in a Detroit Lions uniform, in an Arizona Cardinals uniform. Like to your point, Jeff, like you can win with athleticism. You get drafted for athleticism, but you make it based upon your ability to rush the passer, right? Like and moves and stuff like that. And that's really the tricky one. Or and that's always where Frank Clark was too. It's sort of like. When Frank's body started to break down, he didn't really have the moves to sort of compensate for that, right? And even like you look at the number one pick overall in the draft, just for instructions purposes, like Aiden Hutchinson played like 150 snaps last year. He's a freak, but like we don't have that much tape on him being all that great, right? Like we have 1 year of him being amazing, and that's what you're dealing with at that position.
I do agree with what Irish Mac says. You cannot be 29th. In sacks again next year. They've got to get better. And that says to me, we asked the question, have they done enough on defense? My answer is no, right? But the 12 picks, I think that's clearly, do I smell 8 of 12 on the defensive side of the ball? I never like being all on one side because I think you can say, well, this is our, when you chase needs, I think you need to be replenishing both sides of the ball at all times. And that doesn't mean you go 4-4, or in the Chiefs' case, 6-6. You got to go with the best players available. But this does, Jeff, to me, smell like we're going to see 2 of those first 4 picks are going to be defensive linemen.
Yeah, and they should be. They should be.
Or a big package to move up and get the edge rusher that they think they can do. If you look at some of the trade charts, 29 and 30 will get you to anywhere from 11 to 15, and 29, 30, and 50 will get you, by some charts, clear up into like the 5 or 6.
Hear this. I don't want to hear this stuff, Soren.
I don't either, and I don't think it's going to be that extreme. But we do know the history of Brett Veach, right?
He is aggressive.
We know what he likes to do. So I don't think it's what Eric and I would do, right? I like throwing the darts. More tickets, more chances to hit. If I am moving up, I'm moving up a few spots because I know there's one team I got to get in front of to get the guy that's the difference maker. But I'm playing the value board. And, you agree that we're going to see defensive linemen early and often in this draft for the Chiefs?
Oh, yeah. And they should be in a good position. I don't know if they have to be hyper aggressive to go up in the top 15 to get a guy. There's probably, 7 edge rushers in this draft who could be first-round picks. Not all those guys are going to be first-round picks. There are going to be some guys who get pushed into the second round, into the late first round, just based on the number of receivers and the number of offensive tackles. Yeah, that are going to be going. And so, yeah, once you get past the top 12 to 15 picks, they're going to know where they're sitting. And I would guarantee you there would be at least 3 guys left who are edge rushers who could be falling to them, because you're going to see a big run on receivers at that point, because the Garrett Wilsons, the Jameson Williams, those kind of guys, they're going to be in demand in the 20s. They're just too high impact players. So yeah, I think they can sit tight and find a guy and to be honest with you, find a pretty good player in the second round.
I'd like to find 2 Tamba Halis in this draft. Eric, can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff said a few of their names. Like Boye Mafa is probably not. I mean, Boye Mafa, if he's a top 25 pick, that's a lot, right? Like that's a high pick for him. The Nick Benito out of Oklahoma is another player who, I think probably will go in the second round. You even have here's a player that I really like that might complement Chris Jones really well. That's Travis Jones from UConn, who's kind of like a nose tackle, but he does more than Derek Nottie does. I kind of like that one. Arnold Ebiketie, he was in Nate Taylor's mock draft for the Athletic in the first round. I think it could go any direction for him, though.
Jabo could be in the second round.
Yeah,
go to get him.
Yeah, Ojabo probably won't help him year one, but he could certainly be a value because of the Achilles.
Yeah, but if you liked him as a top 15 player, I don't like
him at 4. Yeah, you take him in the 50s.
I don't like Achilles because I think if one's gone, the other's going, and I think you walked on Eric Fisher for that reason, and so I think, and now there's all these things floating out of that. Part of the reason they didn't go on Tyreek Hill is the heel injury is a precursor to an Achilles tendon. All right, well, if that's the case, then you're not taking a guy who's already.
You have Kingsley Anibare is a good one. Drake Jackson's another one. Like, to Jeff's point, like the issue is if, and I know that this is how they do their board, where they kind of they're kind of patriots in the way they do the board, where they won't draft somebody that they're not high on, even if it's a good value, if that makes sense. So, like, let's say my favorite receivers are Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Jameson Williams, and all of them go, and then like Drake London falls to me. If Drake London's not one of my favorite players, the Chiefs would probably not even draft him, even though it was a good value, right? So I think that the issue here with Kansas City, and one of the reasons they move up a lot, is, I agree with Jeff that, like, of the top 7 edge players, 3 of them are going to make it, or 2 of them, let's say, are going to make it to Kansas City at 29. It's just like whether or not they are in love with those 2 particular guys. And I think that, they were very open to this last year. I think they'll be very open to it this year. They were very open to trading down last year if 2 of their guys didn't make it to their picks in the round 2. Now they happen to like Humphrey and Bolton. I think that that's more likely to happen than them falling in love with a particular edge player and then moving a mountain to get him. I think what's going to happen is they have sort of tranches of players, and if it gets to pick 29 and all those players are gone, they're scooting out. They're probably going to trade out at least one of the picks.
Let's wrap things up with this. And there was a statement by some, it was a throwaway. Mark Donovan making a statement that they're at least exploring the options in the state of Kansas. I do think this is of note. The Buffalo Bills are going to get $850 million in public money. That's the largest, amount that's ever been given to an NFL franchise. Kansas City, it's a little bit different because you've got a football team and a baseball team that have been, at least while they're at the Truman Sports Complex, tied at the hip. And I think that's one of the things that will hopefully come about here, is that they will be separated out, whether it's in the same state or in different states. But Jeff, does that strike you? For people who don't know, Eric based out of Cincinnati, where Pro Football Focus's home base is. Jeff and I are both in Kansas City. Does that jump at you as anything? I will say this. It wasn't another town that was another metropolitan area that was being talked about. So I commend the Chiefs for keeping it in the family. But does that say anything to you, the fact that was put out there at the owners' meetings, or at least in answer to a question? It wasn't no comment. He gave an answer.
Yeah, it certainly was a trial balloon. They're testing the winds and trying to see which way it's blowing. And look, the timing's great. They've never been more popular. You're 2 years removed from winning a championship. Chiefs Kingdom is a real thing here. And as somebody who didn't grow up here, and I've lived here for 15 years, it's always been mystifying to me some of the politics that go into where that stadium is versus where the bulk of the money in this area is at. Obviously, the bulk of the money is in Johnson County. For those people who don't know this region that well, which is on the Kansas side, the stadium is in Jackson County on the Kansas City side. So the taxpayers there are footing the bill for a lot of for a playground for a lot of people on the other side of the state. Look, there's a lot of opportunities in Kansas, and I'm sure that a lot of people want to get a hold of a Chiefs stadium and want to benefit from that. I like Arrowhead. I like the culture out there. I think it would be a bit of a risk to move away from that. I think people, especially in this area, have grown very comfortable with what that means and what a day in that stadium, means to their, not just to them, but their families, the generations of people who follow the Chiefs. But I also know the Chiefs have tried to parlay a lot of what they've done over the last few years with Mahomes as their quarterback, with a superstar quarterback in play, and a team that's suddenly become very cosmopolitan into a win for them. So, it'd be a long time coming, as you said, but I'm not surprised at all.
Eric, I want your perspective on this because you're in Cincinnati. You went to a number of Bengals games. You also grew up in Minneapolis, right? The Minneapolis area, which has a downtown football stadium. You go back there. You have families. You've been around that environment. If you mention a downtown football stadium in Kansas City, it's considered blasphemy because tailgating is such a part of the personality of the Chiefs game, right? And I brought it up today on our show when this came about. I said, listen, you may not have your perfect parking spot anymore, but you can park and cook food just about anywhere in the freaking world. Okay. So settle down at the idea of mentioning that you might not have that massive, vast parking lot to try to, put your fat ass on 3 spaces and make it possible to park anyway. But what does downtown football mean? Like, you've been to Arrowhead for a number of games. I know my guest room bathroom shows the scars of having had you here to see Chiefs football. You've seen what it is out there at Arrowhead. You've seen downtown football in a couple of different locations. Come on, wear it. Your own wife says you leave a mark wherever you go. What does downtown football bring? And would you look at it and be like, that environment, the pre and post environment of Arrowhead Stadium, is something that should be messed with? Because if you get a stadium downtown, particularly one with a retractable roof, even if you put it where it is now, that Kansas City would get back in the mix for Final Fours, which I think is something very important. And they have to make sure that they have a real roof, not a rolling one. And we're debating whether or not it's going to be, muggy and condensation everywhere, and you can't play basketball. You can get back into the Final Four mix with a roof. But is there a reason to say downtown football would be a good fit to get a building that can be used for other things near downtown?
Look, I grew up in Minneapolis. My dad was a Vikings fan. I went to a lot of Vikings games. I was a Vikings fan for a while. I became a Chiefs fan because they were going to leave to LA, right? The LA thing was real for a number, like the LA stadium was used as a bargaining chip to get the Vikings a new stadium, to get the Falcons a new stadium, to get, and eventually everything balked, right? And that's really what this is. Everybody, and the threat, everybody in Minneapolis was like, oh, the threat's not real. The threat's not real. Whatever, it's not real. And then they did get the Vikings new stadium. It was publicly funded. I've never been there yet, but I went to a lot of games at Metrodome, baseball and football. And I tailgated on the top of the Minneapolis Star Tribune building. I've done I've tailgated in parking lots. I've you'll be fine if the stadium's downtown. There's also something really cool. And when the Chiefs lost to the Bengals, that walk that I had to take all the way to the freaking hotel just to get an Uber back home, it's a little different there, right? And in Minneapolis, I know I've been to Twins games at the new stadium. You just get right on the light rail, you go home, right? There are some conveniences about being downtown too. Cincinnati, my office is right next to the stadium, so I get done with the PFF pregame show, I rent a bike, I bike to the stadium, I hop in, it's really easy, right? There's conveniences about it. Arrowhead's Arrowhead's a different beast, though. Like every time I go there, I stand atop, that hill. I take a picture of the two stadiums. It's really freaking cool. All these things have pushes and pulls, right? And you have to deal with them. And ultimately, the fact of the matter is like you just have to get the best deal for the town. And Buffalo, let's be honest, Buffalo got killed in that deal. $850 million of public funding for a stadium that's not even going to have a roof.
I know. I cannot believe that they're not.
Yeah. So if you're the Chiefs and you're a Chiefs fan, and think long and hard about that. You can keep your team and Kansas, like you live in Kansas, like it's the same. It's the same metro area. I get what Jeff is saying for the politics and everything like that, but like get the best deal for the fan base, right? Get the best deal for the fan base. And I know it might stink at first to go downtown or whatever to go to a game, but I can tell you from going to a lot of games in a lot of downtown places, it's not bad. And whether in Kansas City's downtown is great. Power and Light District is fun. Like there's a ton of things to do before and after the game too that you're not able to do at Arrowhead either. You're confined basically just to tailgating if you go to Arrowhead Stadium. So I would just say open your mind a little bit. To stuff like that. And like I said, it's not that bad.
Jeff, I'll give you last word. I said today, the two teams need to make sure that they are putting into whatever they do, what's best for the city, right? And the city, when they come time to vote on what they're going to vote on, needs to make sure that they build the damn things right. And that means do not leave it open air. Minneapolis, the way the Twins did with their baseball stadium, it's preposterous.
It's a beautiful stadium, but it's disgusting. Like I don't go to games anymore there.
April's non-existence, rainy days means no one's traveling, and we know there are towns that people will come here to see baseball. If you don't have a roof over it, you lose every rainy weekend as a possibility for people to come. And from a football standpoint, I think it's got to have a roof because of all the other things you can do with the building, so it's not just filled 10 freaking days a year. You got any final thoughts?
Yeah, well, you said not just that, but it puts you in play for Super Bowls. It puts you in play for Final Fours. They're talking about World Cup matches being played here and trying to court those kind of games. It gives you more advantageous positioning for that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's not just about the Chiefs anymore. If you're building a new stadium, if you're Clark Hunt, you're thinking, I want to be a player in all this stuff that's happening around the sports calendar.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt. I don't know why you would build a building now. Certainly, maybe the MLS isn't there yet, but why you wouldn't have a retractable roof on every building you build right now is beyond me. Like I get football, the judge, football should be played outdoors. I agree, unless the weather absolutely blows. And then you should close the roof. Right?
Go to Buffalo in January.
Yeah. Well, and you could do some creative things. Like I don't know what the stadium's like for Sporting, but for FC Cincinnati, it's open air, but the fans never, if it rains, it never gets on the fans. Like they have it's not beyond the wit of man to build a stadium that can protect people from the weather.
If you're going to finance $1.4 billion, right? But $1.8 billion solves all the
that's
problems.
Like my wife the other day when she goes in and gets the car fixed and it's like $500 and then she doesn't want to buy dinner on the way home. It's like at this point, just splurge for the Indian food. I don't care if it's $50. Like come on. Come on.
You build it right so it has the longest shelf life possible.
Thank you.
That's the key. All right, that's going to do it for us. For Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus, you can check out his great work at pff.com. Jeff Chadiha's wonderful work is available at NFL.com. And, of course, you see a smiling face on the television on the NFL Network as well. You can catch my radio show at 810WHB.com. Thank you for joining us. We're back up next week with our 2D podcast. That'll be on Thursday unless we have a scheduling conflict, at which point we will tweet you. Make sure you're following all of us. Make sure you hit that like button, the love button, text all your friends. We certainly can use any and all promotion that you, our great listeners, our great viewers, will give us for free. So thank you very much for joining us here tonight on Red, Gold, and Bold.